There we go. Welcome to Malcolm and We, a show seen exclusively on malcolmpresents.com. I'm here by myself today without my co-host Malcolm Berman. And today I am thrilled to present my two amazing, wonderful guests. But first, I must mention this little blurb. Join We for MLK, Manifesting the Dream in 40 Days of Peace. Take action and be of service at we.net/MLK. There, got that aside. And now let me introduce Katie Benway. Katie Benway is a mystic, certified life coach, speaker, and author. Over the last 15 years, Katie has worked with thousands of individuals, one-on-one and in small group settings, exploring the deepest human experiences, including death, grief, trauma, and life-altering change. Called to create intimate and honest spaces for people to connect with their spirit, process suffering and transformation, and discover the intersection between their souls and humanness. Katie created Intrepid 11 in 2010. Since then, she has worked with more than 10,000 people from across the United States, Europe, Australia, and Canada, providing one-on-one deep soul coaching support, powerful workshops, transformative retreats, and soulful self-awareness programs. In 2020, Katie's first book, Ignite Your Intrepid Soul, A Courageous Home for Your Human Heart, was published. It spent time as an Amazon bestseller and continues to be an essential and trusted guide for people eager to explore their human experiences through a mystical and spiritual lens. As a speaker and coach, Katie has presented to a variety of groups, large and small, on topics ranging from conscious parenting and grief to past life exploration and living from the soul after life-altering experiences or change. Katie is a proud mom to two boys, Jack and Gus, and is currently writing her second book. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you, Yana. And this is one of my sons, Jack, and he's 13 years old and in 7th grade. And do you want to tell us a little bit about you?
I play baseball. I play golf. I'm going to start refereeing hockey soon, and I'm just hanging out.
Happy to be here.
Yes,
You look like you're tall.
I am. Yeah, 5'11".
5'11".
Yeah. 5'11"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's 13 years old and has a size 14 foot. Yeah. He's a tall guy.
Well, I am I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and I quickly became the shrimp of the family. Everybody in my family was very tall, and 2 of my brothers are 6'3" and 6'5". So I wouldn't be surprised if you got to be really tall like that. And then I guess you're going to have to play basketball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Katie, let's talk about why I wanted you to be here today and why I wanted you to have Jack here with you.
Yeah. So, gosh, we met a couple of months ago when we were planning a workshop for We's MLK Manifesting the Dream event. And so I was born psychic and medium and have been doing this work for a long time. After about a 15-year career in corporate communications, I've spent the last 15 years doing this work, working with people, and do a lot of work with people around death and grief. That's usually how folks find me. They've been through some kind of life-altering loss. And it was in our conversations that I shared a bit about my kiddos who are pretty intuitive and pretty connected. Some of that comes by birthright, some of that because I don't shut it down. When they were really little and were telling me about their past lives, I was really open and encouraging and asked them questions. And so I've always given my kids a lot of room to be who they are, to explore, to express I think, the language of their souls. And so Jack is someone who is spiritually oriented anyway, and he can tell us about it. But when between the ages of 3 and 6, Jack lost his hearing, and went completely deaf. And it was my own spiritual belief and practice that frankly carried me through that time. And Jack will say that his experiences spiritually around losing his hearing, around coping with some of that suffering, were really transformational for him.
So, Jack, what would you, if you can, what would you say was your first really, like big experience with realizing that kind of like your mom and your experiences that you had? Do you remember what they were?
I think it was around the time I had my second surgery to get my second hearing aid. Um, I noticed me and my mom, we were kind of having more like intimate and deeper conversations. Um, since I was kind of in that area of like being prepared for surgery, but then also not knowing what to expect. And just being in that mindset, it kind of brought out, I guess, like a maturity in me. And
I'd say so, because I can tell from the way you're speaking that you have a maturity.
yeah.
And it was so Jack started out at 4 years old, was diagnosed with hearing loss and had hearing aids, but then it continued to lose his hearing. And so what he actually has are cochlear implants, which are implanted in his head, in his ear. And so he's had a total of 3 surgeries. He got each cochlear implant at a different time, one when he was 6, one when he was 8. And it was really right around these surgeries that you would say that you felt like what I witnessed was you turning to spirituality as a way to kind of cope. Yeah.
Because you were afraid? I mean, anxious about surgery, or just because you were just having other feelings at the same time?
I mean, both of those. I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. Scared. I was like fearful. I didn't want to feel like the pain of the surgery. I didn't want to go through the whole recovery process, but I knew I had to do it to be able to hear better and to kind of keep moving forward with my life.
I don't see them.
Oh yeah, they're right here.
Here, turn your head this way.
Aha, I see.
So this is a magnet that attaches to his head. Implanted in his head is the actual device. And then there's a coil that actually goes into the cochlea. And this is what he wears. This is called the processor, and that's what he uses to process the sound. And part of the thing with cochlear implants, when you get to a place where you need one, for instance, for him, so with hearing aids, it's once you lose enough hearing, you can't turn your hearing aids up enough, right? It doesn't matter how loud it is, you've lost so much hearing. And for Jack, he acquired language before he lost his hearing. It was a choice to move toward cochlear implants. There are other folks in the deaf community who do not do that. But part of the price of a cochlear implant is that you lose any residual hearing, and what your brain has to rewire, and sound never sounds the same again.
Yes.
And so voices, music, things like that sound a little bit electronic, right?
Yes. I right now I don't remember like what sound used to sound like before I got my hearing aids or my cochlear implants. But I remember thinking when I got my second cochlear implant that things just sounded completely different. Like everything had just changed.
Was it better?
It sounded better. It was like a higher quality sound. But I guess that was because I was like losing my hearing, and it just kind of brought me back up to like, I guess, average hearing.
Yeah. I had told your mom that when I was very little, I evidently had such a very enlarged adenoids and tonsils that I didn't have any hearing. I don't really understand how that could happen and how my parents didn't know that I couldn't hear. But when I started kindergarten when I was 4, the teacher noticed that I wasn't seeming to kind of really
Yeah.
keep caught up with people and know what was going on. I was used to what I was used to with my family, and you just kind of get used to. I mean, I just there's certain conversations you're having all the time, and so at that age with the younger siblings, I'm sure I wasn't having very complicated conversations. So I twice I flunked kindergarten and I started over because I had to learn sounds, but then they grew back. My adenoids grew back. And so then I started having hearing problems again. And then that part I do remember because I remember I couldn't hear people. And there were games that we would play at summer camp, that telephone game where somebody starts it and they whisper into ear and it goes around. By the time it got to me, all I could say was blah, 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 because I couldn't hear anything. So it was pretty horrible and I was embarrassed a lot. Do you have any problems with kids wondering what this thing is or giving you a hard time about it or embarrassing you?
Not really. Um, I mean, some of my like closer friends, they tease me sometimes, but it's like it's just as a joke.
Yeah.
Um, and they never take it too far. I've had so many people come up and ask me like what my hearing aids are, and it's so funny because all of them they assume I all have super hearing because I have hearing aids. So they will go across the room and they'll whisper something. They'll be like, "Could you hear that?" I'm like, I don't
No.
know. Like,
Not
No.
no. But
bionic.
that's the main thing. A lot of people think I have like way better hearing than I actually have, but
Mhm.
I mean, other than that, not really.
Mhm. I think
Yeah.
when Jack was younger, one of the points of anxiety
Yeah.
was like I would say like second grade, third, maybe first, second grade.
Yeah.
Kids, especially younger kids, would ask all the time.
Mhm.
And I remember us chatting one time. He's like, "Mom, I just don't always want to answer."
Mhm.
And I said, "That's okay. That's your boundary. You don't have to explain to someone
Mhm.
um what this is. Like that's not yours to do every single time someone asks." But I've found, and I've been nervous about bullying and things, but I've found that especially like in our community, I think people know him and there's a familiarity. I also have to say that I think these younger kids are kinder. Like when I was growing up, I think that this would have been a very different experience. I
Mhm.
felt like kids were meaner. But I see more kindness in young kids. I see more openness about differences, disabilities, skin culture, all the things, right? And so I don't know, I just think there's like a different kind of heart, and that's really wonderful
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you seem to be taking it all in stride, and I mean, what else can you do? And it's not in the
Yeah.
end, it's not a big deal, is it? And it's great that there is modern science to be able to help you to hear.
Mhm.
Um, so
Mhm.
that's really good. Now let's talk about the other part, the reason that we're here to talk about psychic ability. And no, I'm not like your mom, but I feel like I can sense things, and there are certain places that I've been where I feel like it's really strong. Do you have something like that too, Jack? Or are you more like your mom, where you have a very heightened sense of?
I'm more like my mom. I mean, there really isn't like a specific place I've been where I like, feel something. I'm just kind of more open to everything and just kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. We've had some experiences around his hearing loss.
Hmm.
Mm, and in fact, uh, because this kind of exploration is just part of our world, when he
Yes.
was preparing last year, so he had to have one of his devices removed and a brand new one put in because the device was failing. And he was really struggling. And we were talking a lot about fear and pain and suffering and just trying to move through some of that. But he ended up coming to me and saying, "Mom, I feel like I can't stop looping about the pain, my fear about the pain. Could we do past life regression? And could we see if I have any past life trauma around pain, around anticipating pain, because I cannot seem to let it go. I'm completely fixated on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
And how old were you then?
I was 12. I was coming out of my last hockey season, and hockey, it was just really too aggressive for me. And like the practices every night, the games every weekend, it was just way too much. And I was kind of going down like a dark mental health hole. Like my mental health was just getting worse and worse, and I was like always angry all the time, and I was just feeling really upset about everything. And the surgery, my revision surgery, it kind of allowed me to like take a step back and I guess revise or like help myself almost.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because it was like a hard,
Mhm.
it was almost like a bottoming out. You were already
Yes.
having a hard time,
Yes.
right? And then the fear brought you to like a new place of like a
Yes.
bottom, right?
So
Yeah.
describe what happened then.
The surgery, it gave me a chance to like it let me step back and just kind of like assess like on myself in like the past few months, like what am I getting myself into, what am I like, and it I wanted to help other people. I found especially after my surgery, I wanted to help other people who might not have had the support like my mother or my doctors
Mm-hmm.
like I have had.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we did end up doing a past life regression together in advance of the surgery, like he had asked. And we found a past life
Mhm.
where he had gone through pain and
A
suffering
lot of it, yeah.
in kind of a war kind of time.
Can you tell about that?
Do you want to talk about
I don't really remember much of it now.
it?
I remember I think it was like maybe Vietnam. No, like World War
You said it
II,
was in the Middle East.
Middle East. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was trying to avoid having to go to war because they were forcing people to, go fight in the war. And I was avoiding having to go to war, and I was like staking out. I was hiding out, and they sent like a group of people after me to come try to find me, and they found me, and they put me in like a concrete chamber almost, and they tortured me for a long time. I don't think there was an exact like amount of time, but a long time. And they finally let me go and forced me to, go into war, and they put me on a boat, and basically like right away the boat got exploded.
Oh, wow. Now, so you would have been older than you are now in this past life that you went to? Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I remember is when we were doing the past life regression, you had said, I'm a man and I'm about 23, and there's a desert and I'm in the Middle East. And then, what Jack just shared is what he
Mhm.
shared after. And he died pretty young, like in his early 20s in that lifetime. And you had felt like that torture experience and that like the fear
Yes.
and the trauma of anticipating pain
Mhm.
Mhm.
was what was getting triggered around the fear of he's going to have a third surgery here in this lifetime. He knows that there's some pain, he knows that there's some discomfort,
Mhm.
but this old stuff was getting kicked up.
So the pain, the anticipation, the anxiety was in your mind probably more than you thought you ought to be feeling.
Yes.
Aha.
Exactly.
Yeah, and because my last two surgeries, or my first two surgeries, I was like really young, and I think maybe I may have kind of felt like that past life thing a little bit, but I was too young to process it or even really understand what it was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was for my third surgery. It was like almost a first of being like, this is what I'm going through,
Yeah.
and we need to figure out where this is coming from.
Yeah.
So
And I and
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. Well, I would say that just as someone who does this with people and has done this thousands of times, that is one of the hallmarks of past life experience or trauma, or that there's some past life stuff coming up, is when you said it, Yana, when there's a reaction, a mental, emotional, visceral to something happening currently that maybe seems bigger or stronger or deeper than whatever's triggering you or whatever's coming up in this lifetime. Like when you say it doesn't quite make sense, my reaction to what's happening, it doesn't quite make sense. A lot of times I'll say to a client, that would signal to us that there's maybe some old past life stuff going on here. But interestingly, I don't know that I've ever explained that to Jack. He himself came to me and said, I think there's a past life thing going on.
Yeah, that seems pretty astute and mature. I mean, I would say that there's a reason that you are like you are, Jack, and there's a reason that you were born to your mom, just because of some of the things that I feel spiritually. But how old were you, Jack, when you realized just how amazing your mom is?
Probably at a young age. I feel like a lot of people, a lot of kids my age, I feel like they don't appreciate their mothers as much, or they don't exactly have like the best relationship with their mothers or even their parents or their family in general. And I think kind of like as I've matured, I've realized how lucky I am to have this like support and help, you know.
I think you're pretty lucky young man, and Katie, you're a pretty lucky mom. um, is Gus like you, Jack?
I mean, he is. I feel like, I mean, he's younger, so he doesn't really, you know, process stuff like I do, but he's getting there. He's on the same path.
Gus
Yeah,
is connected. They're intuitive in different ways.
right.
And I would say that Gus, so when Gus was little, he used to blurt out past life stuff all the time. And he would always be so upset if we saw trees cut down. So I really think in a past life, Gus was like a little environmental justice warrior, because he would be so upset if we saw trees cut down. And he used to tell us he had past lives where he tried to protect the trees. Um, so I think they're both connected. They have very different personalities. But I think that some of this, I mean, is some of it because kind of like energetically and or genetically I am how I am, yes. But I think that some of this is because I don't shut it down.
Right.
Right? And so they say things to me, and a lot of this stuff has come from my kids on their own. I really believe, like, I want them to explore spirituality and decide what works for them. I don't want to indoctrinate them into what I believe. But I don't shut it down. So when they were little and starting to say things, my little guy, was like, I remember being in your belly and it felt like a big ocean in there, Mom. So I just encouraged it. I just didn't shut it down. And so I think, I don't think it's like special to my kids. I think most kids are connected in some really powerful way, and it's our response to it. Curiosity, warmth, compassion. Oh, tell me more,
Yeah.
right? That keeps that channel open.
Well, then that probably, in many ways, would have made you feel, Jack, and you, Katie, when you were little, when you accepted what you were seeing, that you didn't need to be afraid of certain things, like the monster under the bed or something like
Yeah.
that would have been typical kind of fears. And when you were talking about that, when your son says, I remember, this reminds me of when my littlest brother, my youngest brother was really little, and he would tell us stories like that he remembered being at my mom and dad's wedding, and we would laugh at him and everything. But since I've met you, Katie, I've been thinking about that and thinking,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. I mean, why not? We're so
Yeah.
connected. And I know for some folks it seems so far flung, but it's not. Our soul, our spirit is the truest part of us.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And how cool that you're aware of it and know it, and it can be such a big part of you that not defines you so much as just as such an exciting part of you, something to be, I would think, really proud of. I would be.
Mhm.
Um, uh, but I don't know if it has had its scary moments too.
Mm. Oh, has it for you?
Not
Well,
really.
maybe when you were thinking about the fear, but then you knew that you could go to your mom and she could help you with that. But maybe if you hadn't had the mom that you had, it would have been a harder time for you. But Katie, did you feel um how did you get to the point? I should ask it this way. How did you get to
Mhm.
the point where instead of being afraid of it or not sure about it or whatever, where you could go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I get it.
So for most of my life, so starting when I was really little, I had night terrors.
Yes.
And for me, what there's no other way to say this except for I routinely every night saw dead people around me, not how they died, not in like a gruesome way. I literally would just see human beings. And some of it would be sort of in those like falling asleep or waking hours, the in between. Some of it would be full on dreams. And so my parents were dealing with that for years and years with me. Really serious night terrors that never went away. And then it was in my 20s that, and there's all sorts of stories, right? Like, in my childhood, there was a friend of mine who was murdered. And in the ensuing year, or years, plural, my mom had said that several times I was walking and talking in my sleep, and she would put me back in bed, and I would say, oh, I'm talking to Kelly, I'm talking to Kelly, and that's my friend who had been murdered. And so my parents have a lot of stories like that, and I've had just that in those very intense experiences my whole life. It was in my 20s that I finally said out loud to a dear trusted friend what was going on. And she is just extraordinary. She's a counselor and has a degree in Jungian studies, as in Carl Jung. She's a
Mhm.
gifted tarot reader and astrologer, and she really helped me. That was in my 20s, it was about 20 years ago now. And she really helped me understand what was going on with me. And she said, you're incredibly psychic, and um, you've got to learn how to use it and learn how to understand it. And I never set out to have a business or anything. It was really just some relief for me. Because I was in my 20s having active night terrors, falling down the stairs. Like I'd run into walls. I'd hurt myself in my sleep. And so I needed to get a hold of it for myself. Um, and and then as I started to, I think there were moments where I was a little unnerved, like, whoa, this is really what's going on. But frankly, I felt the relief at that point to begin to work with it consciously. And once I began to consciously work with it, I set some boundaries with the other side. And all the night terror stuff calmed way, way, way down. I still will like talk in my sleep.
Oh
Um,
yes.
but
Oh
but I
yes.
don't but it's not that same level of suffering. And I know that's because I'm consciously working with it. Um, and I think that's been a huge part of how I keep myself feeling good and safe and protected. And then I have my own really strong spiritual sense around protection, what I'm available for, what I'm not. I don't walk around blurting things out to people. I have really strong boundaries. So that was sort of my deal with the other side. I'm here to help, and but here's how I need to do this.
Do you still see um, dead people?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I work with so many clients, and a lot of people find me after they've experienced a death, or a lot of people find me when someone close to them is diagnosed with some significant illness. And so a big part of the work is connecting people with loved ones on the other side. And my rule with those on the other side is bring me your loved one. I'm not going to chase people. I'm not going to blurt stuff out to you in the store. I feel like it's really important for the people I'm working with to sanction the process and to say, yes, I want this.
How so so somebody comes to you and maybe they've lost a husband or a friend or a child or what's the process like?
Mhm.
We can talk about it.
Yeah. So, and this is why it's really important to me that someone choose this, versus me saying, oh, I see something and, we're at a restaurant and I'm just going to tell you. I think it's really important that people choose this because it's a sacred experience. It's also an intense experience. And I think it's important for people to acknowledge and consciously choose, yes, I would like to talk about this. I would like to explore my grief. I would like to explore the other side and my loved one. And it's normal for people to be nervous about it, but I think it's really important for people to show up in their wholeness, and say, yes, I'm here for this. And the
So
process.
you would see that person then, or you would, I mean, you see this person, this dead person that's on the other side. You see
Yeah.
that person. Wow.
Right. So like if the client, the human who's here on the planet comes to me, they're the ones sanctioning the process. They're the ones saying, yes, I'm here. I'm ready to explore this. And then I will see or connect with their loved ones on the other side or other guides on the other side. And a lot of times my role is just relaying what I see, sense, feel, perceive, or hear from them. I don't always understand all of the intricacies. And so a lot of times my work with folks becomes quite conversational, right? So I'll say like, I'm seeing this and this, or they're telling me this and this. Does this make sense to you? And the person might give me that color commentary. And my experience of the other side is that they want us to heal. They want us to heal and I would say come into consciousness. So I don't think grief or death, I don't think you get over those things. I think you learn how to live with them and they inform you and they can teach you and inspire you. And so our loved ones on the other side often aren't saying, oh, get over it, or I'm fine, don't worry. It's I'm here. And sometimes it's like, how can our partnership continue? And other times it's an encouragement to continue to process what, you've experienced as a person and live. I think death is meant to teach us how to live. And
Okay.
a lot of the experiences
Part of life.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So, Jack, this is all pretty heavy stuff, but you seem to take it, like it's part of life. And you see dead people.
Not really. There I have actually talked to my mom about this before, but some she says what she used to see and sometimes still see is there's kind of a door floating in space almost with like light kind of coming out where like the door meets the walls. And she says that like she opens that door sometimes and that is where like the apparent dead people appear and stuff. And I've had that dream several times, probably in the last maybe like 3-4 years, except I can't open the door, I can't move, I'm there. And
But
it's
you're aware it's there. Yeah. So you must have a a very evolved sense of what death is, and rather than it being a frightening,
yeah.
thing or really depressing or whatever, it's just just it is what it is.
I mean, oh yes, I think I've always kind of had the sense that a lot of my past lives I have like, died in early death or untimely death or unexpected death. So I definitely do have some experience with it, I guess, in like a past life sense. And through my mom, I'm kind of connected to the other side almost.
Right. Um, Do you think you ever were an old man, or do you think you were ever a woman?
I mean, very likely, yes. I mean, there's
Mhm.
definitely a very good chance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to think about and talk about, and it must be pretty fascinating conversations that
Yeah,
you two can have.
yeah,
I have always been fascinated by it too, and I think I spent a lot of time thinking about, oh, I don't know, just the eons of time and how life
yeah,
was,
yeah.
and for me, as I wanted to ask you, Katie, if this is something, I feel like there are just certain periods in history that I'm really fascinated with, that I have a real, like, attraction to, and other times when I just like, ugh, I'm just not interested in that at all. So I
Mm.
suppose that could mean that those time periods that I'm really attracted to mean that I lived then, but it could also mean that the time periods that I don't really like could also mean I lived then too, and just wasn't a very pleasant experience. Like for some reason, I just really don't like medieval times.
Mm, yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that when we have kind of an unexplained affinity for a culture or a language or a country or a time period, that often is a signal that there's something there past life wise. And I agree with you too that sort of the other end of the spectrum is if you have a real aversion to something, that can be indicative. I would say like if there's a neutral feeling, then that would sort of be the only way it wouldn't be a hit, right?
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that people like I think it's interesting the kinds of movies or stories, books that people are drawn to. I
Yes.
I truly think that it's like we're working out old past life stuff or unresolved stuff from certain time periods. Um, I've seen that a lot with people. The other thing too, like and around his hearing loss, like that when he was young, it was a really hard time when he was losing his hearing, and we were just in and out of doctors, and they didn't know if it was something more. And I remember I used to pray and ask for it to stop, for it to stop. And and then there was one day, and it was interesting. I was in my office, I had finished an evening of clients, and I was just so worried about him. He was probably 6 at the time. And something just came over me, and I realized I'm asking for the wrong thing. And by asking for it to stop, I'm not accepting reality. The reality is my son is going deaf. That's very clear. And it could be more. It could be connected to a more serious, scary illness or a syndrome, a genetic syndrome, or not. But it was also really scary that he was going deaf. And as long as I was not accepting of that reality or at war with that reality, there was a certain amount of peace that I couldn't have. And and so what suddenly came over me, and I know this now and can apply it as wisdom, but then it wasn't wisdom. It was sort of like the other side getting a hold of me and shaking me. And I stopped asking, please let it stop. And I asked, I honor that this is Jack's experience in this lifetime and that there's nothing I can do about it. But let me be the mother that his soul needs me to be to help him become the person he's meant to become. And I remember this prayer. I was standing up, I was crying, I was looking up at the ceiling in my office, and it was like acceptance, surrender, and then I'm here to play the role. Show me how to play the role that I meant to play. And that changed it all for me. It wasn't that I didn't have moments of fear or didn't have anguish about his suffering, but it took an edge off, and I was able to do something with it instead of feel stuck by it.
Right. It's like saying, well, he has brown hair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what it is. And I got, frankly, in that whole kind of ceremonial series of moments, I got some information about his soul, his past lives, what he's here to do and understand. And some of that is, I think his path is this makes him really empathetic and understanding of other people's experiences of being other. And I have not put that on him. He himself has, as he's grown up, has said, Mom, I want to help people. I think we should start a podcast. Let's help people.
You know what? That is something that I wanted to talk to, but I've been looking at the time and noticing that our half hour is up and you have to get back to your hockey game. So would you please come back?
Yes.
You. And we
Yeah.
can talk about that. All right. Katie, do you want to tell how people can get a hold of you?
Yes, so I'm easy to find. The name of my business is Intrepid 11, spelled out Eleven. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, and then my website is katiebenway.com.
This has been fascinating, and I so appreciate you both taking time out of your hockey day to come and be with us. And Jack, you are amazing. I'm feeling really good vibes from you, from both of you, and I'm so pleased that we can do this. So once again, this is Malcolm and We on malcolmpresents.com. Thank you for being here today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye-bye. No. Darn.